find her standing by the way.
Welcome to the second episode of the MEON Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the revival of Irish intellectual life. For our second episode, we are proud to present the second part of our interview with Peter Ryan. To listen to the first episode, click on the link in the description to this video. To keep up to date with MEON podcasts and audio content, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. So, Peter, at the close of your essay, you state the following. The core difference between MAGA libertarians and nationalist populists is this. They are annoyed by material inconvenience. We fear the loss of our soul. Can you elaborate upon the divide between national populists and Silicon Valley libertarians as it pertains to the question of materialism and consumerism?
Yeah, so what I was trying to get there in what perhaps was a very pragmatic analysis in the introduction and through the middle of the essay, I dive into the material versus the spiritual a little bit to really raise the stakes and make a splash there. But I think it's nonetheless a true statement, while perhaps being hyperbolic. I think I spoke to this a little bit earlier in our conversation, where the Tech Bros alliance with the entity of nationalist populism, the zeitgeist of it, is accidental. It is because there are very acute regulatory issues that they face that they want to get rid of for their companies. They want government contracts. These are all things that are sort of the implicit stimulants to why they're doing what they're doing today. Some of them perhaps also have, personal moral indiscretions that they've found the sort of anti-woke trend convenient to excuse themselves. And so, I come from a background as well as, Irish Catholic, a certain upbringing, a certain moral certitude you maybe approach life with, and a certain code of conduct that you see in the way that you should act, and that you should view those you appoint as leaders should act as well, or should be gentlemanly, and so forth and so forth. And when and so that's what I find sort of the movement of the right, or the nationalist populism. That is part and parcel to that. Whereas people with various degrees of moral indiscretions and personal failings, I do not see that as a reasonable argument for why these people should take on the trappings of like anti-woke or populism, or like find common cause with myself or others. So these are all accidental populists. These are all convenient populists. I mean, you can find most of these people, most of these tech bros, were saying terribly mean things about Donald Trump and populist policies in the past. I mean, to almost to a man, you can find the receipts. And most of them have this coming to Damascus story of, oh, well, I fell for the media's tricks, and I realize now Donald Trump is not that bad. But it's like, I'll go after like the intercom guy, McCabe. He went out of his way to fund political operations against the immigration policies of Donald Trump in 2016 with Patrick Collison. This is not like, I disagree. These are people that are actors, that are engaging in high level political operations with high levels of money to like go directly against the policy that you want. And so I view the turn of heart as like incredibly cynical. And so then on the other side, the spiritual nature, the deep roots of nationalist populism, where it does form a canon of literature that you can read, of indigenous sources that you can extract out of. I think, especially using the Irish case, It is very much a spiritual struggle. You could find that all across nationalist literature from the pre-1922 era. The reason that they got up and sacrificed so much was because they did not care about the material concerns so much. And so I think anybody that gets into this has studied it and truly wants to commit themselves to furthering its goals, understands that and understands that material benefits in the short term, especially personally, are anathema to the furtherance of that type of ideal. So that's where, again, I sort of throw the challenge out to anybody um, to debate me on this. I want them to confront the historic uh, literature and doctrines of the nationalist forefathers that people draw from. People throw the tricolor around, people throw slogans and these things around. And so what does that mean? It means you're deriving from an older tradition. And so I want these tech bros and other sort of Johnny come latelys um, to actually challenge that and reject the historic tradition. Because where I come from, I'm very informed by that historic tradition. And so when I try to critique these things or say Ireland should do this, or nationalist populism in sort of an academic analysis is informed by these attributes and these ideas, and so forth and so forth. Um, yeah, it is being informed from that continuum of history. And so these people do not have that same continuum. Thus, they do not have the sort of spiritual connection to why nationalist populists do what they do. And in many respects, you can review the histories of a lot of these men and women, and they are very anti-spiritual in many different ways.
Yeah, so would you consider someone like JD Vance to be one of these sort of newcomers? I believe from memory, JD Vance was very critical of Trump originally. He was a rhino of some kind. And now he is where he is. So is Vance a paradigmatic example of this, or what do you think?
Yeah, so now, again, in America, especially the American right, like you have to be on your P's and Q's because, you know, that's just the way it is. That's the way the political leaderboards shook out. However, in Europe, like there is no reason in Europe we have to dance around the issue. JD Vance is some Yale law grad who Peter Thiel picked up as like an intern and then molded into the VC world and then spat out into being a political operative that's been bankrolled by him ever since. So that's JD's sort of origin story. And in the 2016 era, he was out there criticizing Trump. I believe JD Vance, his sort of really big introduction to politics was like Jeb Bush was going to hire him to be his domestic policy director or something like that. He turned that job down or didn't get it for whatever reason, but he was more aligned with Jeb Bush at that time. And then JD went on to make comments like Trump is bad and he's Hitler and all this other stuff, and he's thinking about voting for Hillary Clinton. So I mean, this is just low hanging fruit of why these people are not aligned. Now, for whatever reason, uh, we've brushed a lot of that under the rug in the American right to have JD ascend to the VP slot. Why that happened, is it because he's just such of a talented gosh darn speaker? And he has this rags to riches story, and he has like this sort of Appalachian Obama quality to him. Could it be that, or could it just be that he was the sort of the concession to Peter Thiel to lock in the donation base to the tech bros? But I don't know. I'll leave the audience to decide on that one. But yeah, so he's a great avatar for the sort of convenient populist, the accidental populist, the cynical populist. And so I don't have much estimation of him, having really grand ideas there. I mean, I'll say this about myself, because so much of the elaboration and analysis, obviously comes from a personal place for a subject matter like this, especially when I get into the spiritual. I mean, like, I have certainly found my political conversions over the years, but I think there's sort of a backbone principle to it, and I'm sort of a younger man that I think it's okay in your teens and your 20s to have a few political conversions. I don't think you go through that when you get into like your 30s and your 40s and your 50s. But to what I was getting at there, many of the antecedents of national populism, which was like libertarianism, so much of that, which I was a part of that movement, the sort of Ron Paul surge in 2008 to 2012. Um, such a big part of that was the rejection of the Iraq War and like the entire U.S. imperial foreign policy complex. And ultimately comes from sort of a moral position of, this is death, and there are stupid reasons why people are dying all around the world, and there's people getting rich off of it and advancing their own very evil interests, whether geopolitically or whatever. So that's sort of a starting point that I kind of come to these things with. Um, and I don't see these people like having that like transcendental position on matters that really like take and imbibe a moral quality that eschews really any core definition of left and right. Um, and I think that's where you get problematic things where like a JD Vance will say like we need to like bomb Iran or something, or not well, he won't fully understand the analysis of like what happened with the Iraq war, what went wrong, what America needs to do to stop that and so forth. And so that's a problem. Like if you're not fundamentally coming at it from that perspective, yeah, again, I view that those sort of moral quandaries as something unique and internal to nationalist populism. Again, like Trump won in 2016 in part because he said the Bushes lied us into Iraq. People are angry about that. People recognize the spiritual evil of some of these actions. You could probably make the same analysis from the economic front from the left when they critiqued 2008 and spoke to sort of the sort of greed and graft and the fact that nobody went to jail over it. And so yeah, so again, you don't find morality really sort of a cause for concern with these people, and even when they start to dive into things that touch morality, it is like from an autistic alien's perspective, trying to um, reverse engineer the concept of but and how it is useful to sort of some other end goal. It's like if you see some of the talk about traditional Catholicism among these people, it is so bizarre, that they treat it like it's a software package they can upload into a docile population to make them act better or something. It is, I mean, if that's how you're approaching Christianity, I mean, and again, like Peter Thiel is one of the people that is most aligned with some of the Christian rightist movements, and like he's an atheist that's trying to like have longevity research stop death so he doesn't die and go to an afterlife. I mean, like he doesn't like he clearly doesn't believe other other issues aside as well, he clearly does not believe in Christianity from authentic, morally centered place. Many of these people don't. Again, they are convenient um, moralists if they ever touch it, and they mostly do not even touch that issue.
Yeah, it's a perspective sort of reminiscent of Auguste Comte, the progenitor of positivism in the 19th century, who instrumentalized religion, to the point that his new positivist age would have its own kind of calendars and its faux saints, etc. For people like Musk, it seems everything is a question of accumulation, competition in a profane realm, consumerism, etc., etc. But I suppose I want to kind of pivot to a different topic, and he's someone who you brought up earlier, and that's Steve Bannon. Roger Gorman was on RTE News recently, and he noted that Steve Bannon was not present at the inauguration. As you said earlier, he was voice first in his condemnation of Musk. Um, does the eschew of Bannon represent the removal of the old guard? Now, I know Bannon and Trump had their issues, but yeah, given he wasn't even there at the inauguration, that's rather telling.
Yeah, and so I'll say as a disclaimer, there are reasons to criticize Bannon for various reason X Y Z, but to preclude it to this debate between Bannon and the tech bros, Bannon and Elon Musk. Um, yeah, so Bannon can articulate much more clearly that 2016 purist version of MAGA and how it connects to the universal nationalist populist. I mean, Steve Bannon, when he kind of got thrown out of Trump's White House and Trump called him Sloppy Steve, to like provide context here, he then found his way to Europe and actually was nurturing some of the movements across Europe. He has some sort of Italian little base of operations over there doing stuff. I don't know if it's still in operation. But rightly or wrongly, Bannon can articulate a very consistent message that is closest um, uh, to a pure definition of nationalist populism. And so what we see is that Bannon kind of got sidelined in the first term. Uh, Bannon literally went to jail. Again, we can sort of why he went to jail, was it just or not, is a different conversation. But he like went to jail for Trump, and then he gets out, and his media apparatus and his attention market share is certainly a necessity to the preservation and success of Trump. But it is funny to the degree that he just finds himself kind of on the outskirts, and like he's only listened to um, when it just conveniently lines up with the pre-existing like position they were going to go for, and then when it doesn't, like they don't listen to him. Like they just have completely not listened to him on the H-1B debate. Like he's been shut out of that. Arguably, like maybe Stephen Miller is like his closest confidant that's in the White House that still has pull, and that could sort of like infuse Bannonism into White House actual policy in conflict with the tech bros. But yeah, that's yet to be seen. And so I would say what's kind of interesting in sort of a stage play aspect of it, if I could be artistic about the course of events, is that here you have this Irish American, Steve Bannon, that has a special place in his heart for Ireland, and Catholicism, which is implicitly Irish, informs much of his exoteric talking points, as he describes. He is someone that sort of committed himself not only to national populism, but to like the personality cult of Trump and advancing that specific campaign and the baggage of people that he disagrees with, along with that. And by doing so, he got sent to jail for it, and then has really, not been listened to, not been brought into the light. He was not in any prominent seated position or speaking role or anything like that, and he doesn't have a White House or executive branch position. So, maybe there's a lesson here for the Irish seeking to glom on to their version of this, is that, the Irishman, Paddy didn't get his due in the end. Uh, and so, the Anglo Musk always wins, or something like that. Uh, but uh, but no, but I think that I'm being jokey there, but I think it's true. Bannon is not listened to. He has an authentic defense of nationalist populism. He got into a big fight with Musk and the tech bros over the past month. And it just sort of a preview of potential disappointments that the Trump 4 years will have for the movement. And again, we can't, if you're in the American right doing anything, you can't give voice to these. I'm a very, you know, unintelligent person by trying to have authentic beliefs that I try to articulate. But in Europe, as I said, there's no reason to hide the truth. There's no reason to not talk about these things because they actually matter to the sort of strategic interest of the movement and then like the actual government decision making. So yeah, so just take the lesson of Bannon to heart that Patty doesn't win, but Patty can lick the boots and go to jail and all of that, but Patty does not win.
Yeah, I think what was interesting is that Bannon was present at the recent Passage Press party. The Passage Press, the publisher, I believe, has published works by Curtis Yarvin, who, of course, has links to Peter Thiel. So it's interesting that Bannon isn't completely persona non grata among these tech bro types, despite his sort of voice first criticism of Elon Musk and Vivek and anyone else who's pro H1B.
Yeah, well, Passage Press was not the White House. I mean, like, yeah, Bannon, because he does have stature, he's not a nobody. Like he will have clout to show up at XYZ events. Like I think gave a prominent speech at the New York Young Republicans event that they did maybe a few months ago or something, where he was sort of getting some highlights. He was at the TPUSA conference where it's a big stage, a lot of people in the audience. So it's not like Bannon doesn't have clout and he can't get on a stage or in sort of an exclusive VIP party. But what I'm saying is like where it matters, like he does not have executive uh, power. He does not have a significant position as an advisor in the White House. Trump did not, seek to be in the same room as him for any of the campaign and post-campaign activities, um, at least publicly. So yeah, so that's where um, I would just make that distinction that and that's the important thing here too that I'm sort of again my warning as the purpose of my essay you know is that much of the attraction of the tech bros of the sort of convenient MAGA 2.0 is that a lot of individual members of the Irish right have the ability to gain clout, uh, social media likes, money, jobs, influence, at a very personal degree. So that's where, sure, you could be invited to the Passage Press VIP party. You could get a job with them, even. Yeah, these are all things that, like, sure, those things could happen. But that's where, kind of return to the spiritual dimension. It's like, is that a material benefit to your individual ego or pocketbook? Or like, does that further the interests of the movement and speak to the sort of bigger picture? Um, so yeah, so that's where you could find the another analogy to Bannon, where like certainly there's people that fund him, there's people that invite him to VIP events. He can get on a stage and feel the admiration of a crowd, but at the end of the day, does that translate into power? And so my conclusion is no. And I would find that the same development would occur with an Irish populist that seeks the clout. D- to get it, they must compromise their positions to some degree. And then when the power sharing is doled out, they find themselves without power and none of their core positions were actually carried over, and it's actually the sort of compromise that they had to make that are things that get put into place. So, fair warning.
I suppose apologists for Trump would argue that Elon Musk, and presumably others like him, but they particularly identify Musk as someone who's, for now, an ally, but will later be sidelined during the course of the presidency. This certainly wouldn't be Trump's first time jettisoning a personage in his circle, whether you look to Scaramucci or Roger Stone during his first tenure in office. Do you think Elon Musk will be sidelined? And if not, how will he impact the regime policy wise? We've already seen an influence on policy in terms of the embrace of Bitcoin.
Yeah, there is just, I think, too much sunk cost of political donations that have been put in by Elon and the tech bros, but to focus on Elon, it's like Elon forked over a ton of money. There's still a lot of money left over to sort of do things that Trump may want to do. Like, for instance, Trump just announced the AI Stargate project that requires a lot of investment. There's the TikTok ban that's turning into sort of a TikTok sale to 50% of an American ownership stake, where he referenced like Elon being maybe one of the people that could buy TikTok. Um, so there are strategic interests that Trump has in this time around keeping Elon on side, for, I mean, let alone just the fact that Elon owns Twitter. Um, Twitter can make and break Trump's influence. And even though I think Trump, in many ways, his personality cult can beat Musk, Musk has the technical levers on, deboosting posts and boosting anti-Trump posts. So I think Trump just doesn't want that fight. Like, it's like he just has way more to gain by keeping Elon on his side than like rejecting him in a way that was done in the first term. Elon's just more, and also like 10 years later almost, Elon is thus more rich, is richer, has more connections. Uh, and so like it's a different calculus this go around. So yeah, that's where it seems where you might have the odd duck, rejection of a guy um, in the cabinet of Trump. It's hard to say what might happen there because there seems to be a more calculated Trump. There seems to also be a lot more people behind Trump that have already figured a lot of these things out. Whereas in 2016, like that wasn't the case. It was very ad hoc. And so I think there's a lot more autopilot going on for 2024 Trump. And so you'll see a lot less of those ad hoc projections. I'll never say never with certain types of people that and Trump's personality that could happen. But yeah, I think we're going to see similarities to the first Trump term, but we're going to see some new unique traits to the second term. Just because Trump is now a political animal, he has political connections. The tech bros, and to some degree, much of the mainstream. I mean, like Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post as well as being Mr. Amazon. And so, and the Washington Post was a representation of a media outlet very much against Donald Trump. And Bezos switch over to Trump and the Post editorial mutation over that, is sort of a sign that way more than just Silicon Valley has come around to Trump. And so there are a lot more people behind the scenes backing him and creating a more stable executive branch for Trump to manage.
So, how does a movement like national populism in Ireland, which is poor in terms of seat capital at the moment, prevent the influence of wealthy benefactors from abroad whose ideological position is alien?
In certain ways, you can't stop it. Those people are going to do their deals, and they're going to, um, like I said, they're going to have money for higher definition cameras for their podcast to look more snazzy, for posters, or to hire people to, do advertising for them, or, the more weirder ways that social media works, where there's bots and other things. So there's going to be a presence. I would just say, the marketplace of ideas, in an almost libertarian position I'm sort of suggesting there, counterintuitively, is just to sort of challenge these people to sort of like, what are their ideas and what do they hold to, and like sort of uh, what are their priors, where are they coming from, were they on the complete opposite side of an issue, 1 year ago, 5 years ago, again, was it to the degree that they had a quiet disagreement in the privacy of their own home, or did they actually like engage publicly in a high stakes, money war against a policy or something? So I would just say like, communication, debate is and sunlight is what sort of, will reveal, if these people should be given a nationalist sort of hearing and support. Um, and that's where I go back down to sort of referencing the Irish nationalist forefathers. I think when you reference them, you get into a very big puzzle with these newer ideologies and these more cynical ideologies, where if you push it enough, you'll realize that the people that are embraced by the Silicon Valley tech bros, they will have to at some point tell you that yes, we reject the concept of the nationalism that was purported by the historic tradition of Ireland. We reject that outright, and we have a different conception. We have a different canon of literature. We have different influential writers and thinkers that inform us, whether these people actually are readers themselves or they're just sort of picking up secondhand from the wonks that are behind them. Um, and so, yeah, so I think forcing them into a debate where they basically conclude in a rejection of the past, a rejection in so many ways of that spiritual dimension of which I spoke to. I think that is one of the ways to sort of circumvent that. Um, at the same time, I think that, what I also said in my essay is that while it is, conventional to use terms like left and right, I think that nationalist populism is very much agnostic to those terms, and that uh, in the wheels of history that turn, those categories are ultimately irrelevant as we approach, this the second half of the 21st century, as we start to get into it. Um, and that's where I didn't really get into it in the essay, and I spoke to it a little bit before in this conversation. But the strategic future of a nationalist populist movement, it just sort of made all of the grounds it will with sort of right wing people per se. Like that market has been, tapped, and the people that you want are going to stick with it, and the people that like are fair weather are always going to be fair weather. Um, and so that movement needs to now embrace, the left and the center, not because it seeks to compromise its positions, but because it seeks to reveal to the left and the center that its positions are in the interests of them. Um, and that, as I said, if you are doing anything populist, you are inherently seeking the majority of your nation to support you, and you are never going to get that unless you do actually make these bridges to the left and the center. Um, and I think there is way more, success to do those things once it's really tried, and especially in the context of what we see going forward with American hostility to Europe, American hostility to Ireland, issues that are breaking down liberal paradigms for people, that make it easier for political realignments to happen. So that's where I would say you can circumvent this sort of tech bro encroachment is by allowing them to have an echo chamber of a very small subculture with a very hard ceiling, and the rest of the country is mobilized around a realignment of politics, um, without the compromising of ideas. And to whatever degree someone could say, well, going to the left is a compromise. Um, Again, these people are aligning with people that want open borders. So I mean, it's just they have no leg to stand on in terms of like arguing who is compromising or not. Um, and whereas the left, like I don't think actually the left, once you really start talking to them, that they actually have even those extreme types of positions. I think a lot more, we'll call them normies, left or center, actually do believe in the concept of like a limit to immigration. And I think now with the liberal paradigms breaking down, there is more room for those types of convergence to happen. One of the writers I like quite a bit, and I've had on my podcast in the past, I've written things with her, is Angela Nagel. She wrote in 2018 the left case for against open borders in American Affairs Journal, and that's in a way a template of what I'm speaking to. That there is a lot more Angela Nagels on the left and the center out there that will come to a nationalist populist understanding of things. Then there are people that want American refried memes from Silicon Valley in Ireland.
Curious old fellow, shall I join your way? Will you grind the organ while I sing my